Hey guys, this is Mrs. Faith. Today we're going to dive into one of our first big concepts for the Ancient Civilizations unit. That is called the Neolithic Revolution. This is all about the birth of farming. All right, so for today, our goals and learning outcomes include for you to be able to walk away and understand what the Stone Age is. The Stone Age actually has two parts to it, the Paleolithic Age and the Neolithic Age. There are major differences between those two. We're going to get into that today. So that's your first learning goal. Our next is to understand the discovery of farming and how that really was the catalyst for the shift from Paleolithic Age to the Neolithic Age. And the last goal and learning outcome for today is to see the development of farming and how that really changed human history together. We wouldn't be here today doing the things that we're doing if it wasn't for humans figuring out how to farm. We're going to get into that today. There's also a series of causes and effects that follow that. There's 5, and we're going to get into those as well that kind of build upon each other to get us to the point where we are going to start becoming civilized. So before we get started, we're going to go over 3 vocabulary terms just so for you to be very clear and understand what we're discussing today. The first one is the Stone Age. So this is what we're talking about all day today. Okay, so the Stone Age is a point in human history that started 2 million years ago and ended around the year 3000 BCE. The Stone Age gets its name from literally when humans were making their tools out of stone. And the Stone Age ended once we as humans started learning how to make our tools out of metal instead of stone. So we are going to get into that later on in our unit of ancient civilizations. But for right now, for today, everything we're talking about is the Stone Age. Humans are using stone tools. Historians look at the Stone Age, and we actually divide it up into 2 different time periods. The first one is the Paleolithic Age, and the next one is the Neolithic Age. Now, these are our next 2 vocabulary terms, so let's go ahead and take a look at the difference between these 2. So the Paleolithic Age means the old Stone Age. There is a root in the word Paleolithic, paleo, which actually means old. Okay, so paleontology is the study of things from the past, old things from the past. So anytime you see a word with paleo, it means old. So in this case, this is the old Stone Age. When you hear Paleolithic Age, I want you to really think about cavemen. Okay, people wandering around, living in caves, very unsophisticated, not civilized yet, limited forms of communication, both verbal and written, very primitive, almost animalistic type of human. Okay, that's the humans of the Paleolithic Age. During that time, humans were hunting and gathering. Okay, so going out and hunting wild animals, going out and gathering whatever food they could find, nuts, berries, plants, whatever they could eat to sustain life. Humans were also living out in the open at this time, so we weren't living in homes. We were living in, caves if that was possible, or creating some kind of crude or non-sophisticated type of structure just to live in and protect it. Humans at this time also were moving around a lot from place to place. Okay, and again, think animalistic. Think animals in the wild today. They're on the move constantly, just trying to survive, just trying to live. And so again, humans were driven by survival at this point. Okay, living to survive, and that was the main focus. So that's the first part of the Stone Age. There's another part to the Stone Age. This is called the Neolithic Age. Now, the Neolithic Age means the new Stone Age. Just like paleo meant old, neo means new. Okay, so anytime you see that root word neo in any word, it always means something new. So in the Neolithic Age, you're really going to start to see the development of the first kind of modern humans. Now, don't think of modern as like us today with our technology and cars, but really you're starting to see a more sophisticated human being. Okay, these Neolithic people are going to become some of the first civilizations on planet Earth. We'll get into that later on in this unit. But again, we're not quite animalistic as the Paleolithic cavemen. We're a little bit more modern. Okay. One big reason why we're a little bit more modern is instead of going out and hunting and gathering, we start to become quite intelligent, and we learn how to grow our own food and how to keep our own animals for various reasons, mainly for food, but other reasons as well. We also start to build shelters, like permanent, nice homes. Now, not homes we live in today, but starting to build things out of mud and timber and structures that are going to be a little bit more stable and a little bit more protective. And we also start living in one place. We're not wandering around anymore. We're going to stay and we're going to live. And again, where we saw in Paleolithic age, people are just trying to survive, there's a big shift here. We're going to start to enjoy our lives. So you're going to see things like art, you're going to see things like literature and jewelry making, and humans really starting to pay attention to things that make life more enjoyable. Where in the Paleolithic era, it's just to survive. All right, so to recap, we've got the Stone Age, which is everything from 2 million years ago to about 5,000 years ago, which was 3000 BCE. Most of human history, as long as humans have been alive on planet Earth, we have lived in the Stone Age, okay, making our tools out of stone. The Stone Age is broken down into two periods. The Paleolithic Age, okay, the Old Stone Age, the cavemen, the hunting and gathering, on the move, we're living in survival mode. And then our Neolithic Age, okay, our new Stone Age, our modern humans. We're farming. We are domesticating animals. We're settling down in one spot. We're building structures, and we're starting to really enjoy our lives, okay? So these three terms, Stone Age, Paleolithic Age, and Neolithic Age, we're going to hit a lot throughout the lesson today. All right, so let's talk about our first thing before we get into the causes and the effects. So the shift from Paleolithic to Neolithic. A lot of this just kind of recaps what we just talked about, but I'll go into a little bit more details here. So in the Old Stone Age, that old Paleolithic age, we hunted and we gathered. That's how we got our food. Now, this was a very unstable and unreliable way to get food, meaning we could go out and we could hunt, but we weren't always successful. And if you're not successful in your hunt, you don't eat that day. Likewise, if you're sick or you're injured and you can't go out and gather food or go hunt the food, then you don't eat that day. So there was constant fear in these people, whether or not they were going to see their next meal. And if you went so long without eating, then you could die, or you could get really weak and then you couldn't survive. So it was a very risky way of living, okay, unstable and unreliable. Because food was the main driving force of survival here, humans started wandering around from place to place. We weren't staying in one spot for too long, about no longer than about 6 months, because once you hit that 6-month time, you probably have hunted all the animals in the area, and you probably have overgrazed, if you will. So picked all the nuts, picked all the berries, eaten all the plants, and then there was no food source left. So you had to move on once you stayed there for quite some time. And again, because survival and food is the driving piece here, humans had to follow the food. They had to follow where the animals were going, and they were constantly on the move. Humans were living in shelters, okay, sometimes caves if that was available, or something temporary, meaning it wasn't something they spent a lot of time on. It was just something just to do a basic protection for them. Now, these houses and these shelters were not very well built, and humans were very exposed, okay, exposed to harsh weather if it were to arise, as well as being exposed to wild animals. So it was kind of a dangerous way to live, and you were susceptible to a lot of natural disasters and or attacks from wild animals. So in the New Stone Age, though, that Neolithic age, okay, we're going to start farming. We're going to start raising animals. This is going to cause, for the very first time in human history, humans now have a stable and reliable food supply, meaning they know they're going to have food. They know that if they do get sick and injured, there's food in the farm out back. They know that if they go out and they don't get a good hunt, then there's an animal in the back that they can, eat if need be. So it is the first time that you can actually depend and know in human history that I'm going to eat today. This is going to cause people to really kind of settle down and start living in one place. They now have their own areas where they're growing their food, and they're starting to keep animals for various uses, okay? Meat, milk, they're going to learn how to make cheeses, even animals for transportation are going to start being used. This overall was a much easier way of life. It was safer, it was more comfortable. And the new Stone Age, like the Stone Age, is going to end when we start making our tools out of metal. Again, that's not going to happen today in the stuff we're discussing, but it's going to happen in some of the people we talk about in the future. All right, so the shift here, okay? How did this happen? When did it happen? We don't have a lot of details. We have a few pieces of evidence that have been left from time. But overall, it is understood that this shift, okay, happened in a very specific place on planet Earth. So there is a region just east of the Mediterranean Sea in what would be today considered Asia, the countries of Israel, Turkey, that area is where we find some of our very first pieces of evidence of humans starting to farm for the first time. Here, what's interesting is the land is very fertile. That word fertile, we're going to use a lot, is basically means it's very good for growing crops. There are certain things in the soil here in this part of the world that makes growing crops very easy. Humans didn't really have to work hard. They just kind of threw out some seeds and they just grew food. So that's where humans then kind of learned how to farm for the first time, where it was easy. This area is going to be referred to as the Fertile Crescent, and I'll show you a picture of this here in just a bit. And really, this is going to be the spot where you're going to see the very first civilization on planet Earth, and we're going to get to that. So one big thing I want you to understand is that people learned how to farm over thousands of years. It's not like one day a guy woke up and was like, bam, I know how to farm. It took them a really long time to figure this out. Some people think that maybe people learned how to farm by mistake. Maybe they were throwing out old seeds, like in a compost pile, and all of a sudden it started to grow, and they started to put, the 2 and 2 together and realizing that they were doing this, okay? And then eventually we will start farming with intention, but it took thousands of years for this to happen, not overnight, not even within a generation. It took a long time for humans to do this. With this shift, life improved dramatically. Life was safer, more comfortable, and it's going to get a lot more interesting here, especially when we start talking about the rising of civilized beings, okay? All right, so here's a little map here, just kind of showing you where some of the first Neolithic settlements are located. Let me see if I have my little cursor here. Okay, right here, this is present-day Turkey. There has been some evidence of some early farming farming communities found right here. And then down here in Jericho, which is kind of like today, present-day country of Israel, the present-day country of Syria is right in here. This whole area in the blue is what's called the Fertile Crescent. Okay, you see 2 rivers. We've got the Mediterranean Sea, the Persian Gulf. This is present-day country of Iraq. Okay, so that's where we're at, and this is where these people first were. Okay. All right. Okay, here's the big idea so far. The shift from being a hunter and a gatherer to being a farmer is one of the most important advances people have ever made in human history. Because if you think about it, we would not be here today doing what we're doing if we did not learn how to farm. If we didn't learn how to farm, we would still be like those Paleolithic ancestors, those cavemen running around in a very animalistic way, just trying to survive. The fact that we don't have to worry about food, the fact that we do have technology and we are an advanced civilization today, all comes back to farming. It would not be possible if we did not learn how to farm.